Are you nervous?
No, just excited, but those two things are very much the same.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm nervous and I'm just telling myself it's excitement.
Right. All right, you, Joe. Have fun. You're on belay. Climb away. Have a good
Okay.
time.
Okay, let's see here. I thought I had healed, and I thought I really understood healing. I knew the supplements. I knew the mental attitude. I knew the lifestyle things. I'd been practicing them for almost my entire lifetime. Diet, exercise, clean air, clean water, clean food. But we never know what we don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jill Carnahan.
Jill is the leading voice in biotoxin illness and chronic conditions that are driven by toxicity.
Dr. Jill, I think my celebrity sister.
She really does care about the patient.
She believes me that something's wrong and that she wants me to find health again.
Oh my gosh, you're dealing with mold? You have to work with Dr. Jill Carnahan.
What she does is what we need across the board everywhere now.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Dr. Jill here for another session of Dr. Jill Live Q&A, here to answer your questions. If you just reply in the comment box, why don't you stop in first and just tell me where you're from and say hello.
Hey, Ravi, how you doing, buddy? You helping me out? You're such a good helper. Yeah.
You, knowing what you want to do. And I firmly believe that just about everyone, if not everyone, knows what they want to do. It's just all a matter of whether or not you believe.
Hey.
Hi.
Good afternoon. So nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Your name is my sister, Jamie Lynn. So I saw your chart and I was like, oh, you're supposed to be here. It was so nice to meet you.
Oh my gosh, you.
That's all. So now I want to hear your story. I always just like to start with you telling me about you, where you've been. I've got all your data here and we'll look through this. But I kind of want to hear, first of all, where you were born and a little bit about your family and then how your health journey transpired.
Okay.
So I'll listen.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So many people who come to see me have seen other doctors. They've been to great medical centers, but not once have they been seen and heard on a human level.
I had that done, and then after that, I went in for chemo in May. May 6th. May 6th was my first chemo day.
Did the chemo really affect you a lot on the gut?
It did,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, because
yes.
it affects rapidly dividing cells and So I think we should just test you and see. It's real common to have the chemotherapy create more permeability in your gut. So basically the lining of the gut is like tiles on your bathroom wall. And the grout in between by chemo gets dissolved and ruined. So all of a sudden you lose the integrity of between the cells, the junctions. So corn antigen, wheat antigen, egg, dairy, they can sometimes sneak through into the blood, which is just like one cell layer thick. And then when it goes into the bloodstream, your body will create antibodies to that. And all of a sudden you have food reactions that you never had before. So chemo, especially Cytoxin, which you were on, studies show that Cytoxin actually works by inducing leaky gut.
Really?
Because it basically allows this dumpage of products into the bloodstream. The body starts to fight it, and it actually revs up the immune system to fight the cancer. Wow. But you don't want that long term because an overactive immune system is just as bad as an underactive one. And temporarily unloading that burden from the immune system by taking out a few of the top antigens like wheat and dairy, you tend to feel better. So that's a hard one, I know. Mm-hmm. But if it's ever too much, I always want to find where you're at. Like, oh gosh, Jill, this is too many. So let me know.
Okay.
Just kind of know I'm really flexible. I'll never not tell you stuff that's important, but you're always going to have choices. We're partners. Mm-hmm. So now that you're in, you've got me. You're not getting rid of me.
Yay!
Thank
awesome.
you.
We will head out and I'll get this for you. So. Sometimes the greatest gift I can give them is just to listen and hear their story. I need a hug.
All right, sounds good. I agree.
So I don't know if I've ever had a patient who sat before me and told me such an identical story to mine. And I've seen a lot of breast cancer patients, so
oh my goodness,
my heart is with you.
When I read your story, I said it was just, I was like, this is my story. And
I know. Remember what I told you in there? This is for another purpose so much greater. You're just started. He's going to use it so greatly.
Thank you.
I know it.
I love you. I love you.
I know what it's like to suffer. I know what it's like to wonder if you're going to live or die. I know what it's like to curl up in a fetal position on the bed and be racked with pain and not know if you can even take another breath because it hurts so bad. And I know things that no medical education can teach you about what it is to suffer and what it is to survive. So in June of 2001, I was nearing the end of my third year of medical school and learning about breast exams for patients. And I think I just reached over my left breast and probably first or second time I did that. And I was like, that's odd. There's a little thickening there. Must be normal. I did not think twice about it. Fortunately, I went home and asked my husband, Aaron, I said, what do you think? And he's really intuitive, and I remember just seeing his eyes, and that's all I needed to see. He doesn't think this is okay. Maybe I should take this seriously. And then right back into denial. I don't have time for this. I don't have time to get an exam. I have rotations. I'm working 36-hour shifts at times. But he insisted. I got an exam, I got an ultrasound, a mammogram. It only took a couple weeks, and I got the call from the oncologist who did the surgery. And she said, Jill, you have aggressive breast cancer.
She had told us she was getting a test, and she was going to call back, and I remember where I was. I was in Peoria.
Every indication was it was a very, very, very serious thing.
You get aggressive cancer at age 25. As a guy, I don't think I realized how serious it was.
I mean, you grow to accept it, but it's like, it just seemed like, something wouldn't happen to a young, healthy, appearing young gal.
I was only 25. I had always taken care of myself. I exercised, I ate well, I tried to do everything possible to avoid illness. I remember thinking, how could this be happening to me? So my dad was a farmer, and his dad was a farmer, and I'm told 2 Hodel brothers came from Germany a couple generations prior to that in the late 1800s, and there's been farming ever since.
Well, that was your bedroom up there in the left
that's what I thought.
corner?
I thought that was, yep.
Other window was Mom and our bedroom. And then down on this side was the red living room.
Yeah, I was saying, I remember that when I was growing up, real young, the TV was in the closet. Yeah. And once in a while, we'd get it out for special occasions.
TV was a big no-no.
I know, right?
I guess from definitely, work was a big focus.
We worked a lot. There's always farm work that needed to be done.
Probably mostly a lot of hard work.
Yes, we are definitely work-oriented, maybe to an extreme.
I mean, my grandpa was born in 1910, Grandpa Hodel, and his philosophy was, this is the life of work. The sooner you figure out, the happier you'll be.
Maybe some of the spouses, when they first get in the family, they think, man, all these people do is work. And I think you'll find in life, when you enjoy what you're doing, it's really not work. It's just life.
I do vaguely remember going on a few trips with you to the elevator. Now, did you, before you obviously had storage at the farm, but did you use this for extra if you ran out?
We used to a lot, but since we've gone to the non-GMO.
You can't mix it, can you?
Ours got to be kept separate. But I was president here from about 88 to 2000. And it's grown a huge amount since then. Yeah, I mean, it's probably, oh my goodness, probably 20 or 30 times bigger than what it used to be.
Wow.
So, anyway.
I remember going with you because I'd get a lollipop or something at the...
Oh yeah, they'd have little treats there.
They would have some sort of treat there, and I always would get a sweet lollipop or something. Most kids go to the bank, and I got to go to the elevator.
All farm kids get... So,
yeah.
So these bins, like...
Growing up, my dad was one of my heroes. He had this way of just gentleness and kindness that was not usual for a man of his stature in that culture. My dad was an incredibly hard worker, and I wanted so badly for him to be proud of me. He always tried to make us feel like we were important, and when he could spend time, he would. But I remember there were seasons where we wouldn't see him for weeks.
Jill never was real strongly involved in the farm.
I would say she was different than the other kids in that way because she didn't enjoy so much what the other kids did. Like hoeing in the garden and planting seeds and, be with her dad in the pickup truck.
The kinds of illnesses I had as a child affected my ability to work, and especially to be out on the farm. Everything that meant the world to my mother and father, the corn and soybeans, they were toxins to me. I was so allergic to them. My eyes would swell shut. My skin was completely covered with rashes. I would itch all night long till I bled. I'd sneeze and sneeze and sneeze and sneeze, and then I'd fall asleep. When I think about my health as a child, the emotion that comes to mind is just guilt and shame. I felt so badly for being sick. Like that weakness somehow made me less than. less valuable than my brothers because they could work. They didn't have any trouble. Looking back, it felt like it was my fault, like there's something wrong with me, that I couldn't work hard. I started thinking about possible causes to my cancer, especially at such a young age. One of the things that's common on the farms is pesticides and herbicides and organophosphates and chemicals, and some of them have endocrine disrupting effects on the human body. What this means is they act like hormones and contribute to hormone types of cancers like my breast cancer. My immune system and my detoxification system were not up to the challenge of decreasing the toxic load that I was exposed to. And I have no doubt that it contributed to me getting cancer at 25. I was the youngest person to ever be diagnosed with breast cancer at Loyola University, where I went to medical school. And there was a cancer board. And what this was all the meeting of the great oncologists at Loyola, where they would take 1 or 2 cases every month and say, this one is really interesting, this one is really puzzling. And what you never want to be as a patient is the interesting case. I was the interesting case because I was this 25-year-old who had a very aggressive cancer, and they had never seen it in someone that young. Because I was a student, I actually got to sit in on the end of their conference, whereas normally they wouldn't have the patient in there. And they talked about, what are we going to do with Jill? And they all had their ideas and their brilliant treatments. One of the things was they were wanting to be incredibly aggressive with the treatment because I was so young, which is wonderful if it saves your life. But on the other side of it, what I had to think about was the things they don't talk about a lot, and that's quality of life. That's how does it affect your brain, your skin, your ability to recover, your ability to live life normally, your ability to work or take care of a family. So when I came to treatment options, I realized I needed to create a new plan that was mine. And I ended up doing a couple things differently. One was they had recommended 3-drug chemotherapy. And as I looked at the drugs, one in particular had incredibly high cardiotoxic effects, which meant it had a high risk of congestive heart failure later in life. And I knew at 25 I had a lot of decades to go if I survived cancer, and I did not want to have congestive heart failure at 30 or 35. So I looked into alternatives that were in the same class, and I found another drug that was not widely used, but had less heart toxic effects. And I actually asked to have that drug, even though it wasn't the standard. And I went to a special place that allowed me to get the drug in 2 different doses on 2 different days. So like a Tuesday, I'd get half the dose, Wednesday, I'd get the other half the dose. And by doing that, I diluted the toxicity just slightly so that I didn't get quite as sick as if I had had it in 1 dose. And I'm still thinking I'm strong, nothing's gonna get me down. And my first completely delusional thought was, oh, I can keep going to medical school. I can keep doing everything I'm doing. No one will even know I have cancer. Well, very quickly, after the first treatment, I knew this was not gonna be an easy journey. I was incredibly sick from the treatment. Those drugs just slayed me. They tore up my gut, I had horrible gut pain. My whole mouth at times was covered in ulcers, so all I could do was drink cold water through a straw, and even that burned and hurt. And I was so tired. I don't think until that point I understood what brain fog or cognition issues were, but that chemo did a number on my brain, and I remember for the first time in my life feeling foggy and unclear and completely unable to do school. I had to take a leave of absence, and there was no way I could work or go to rotations. I could barely take care of myself, and it was a rough go. And then when it came to radiation, they would recommend external beam radiation that was targeted so that it mostly missed your heart, but there was a little splay onto the heart on the left side. And you would have this external burn on your skin because that radiation had to go through your skin to get to the tumor area. And so that's when we looked up Dr. Kuski. Dr. Kuski was doing a massively experimental protocol called brachytherapy. This was brand new. No one had ever heard of it at the time. Now it's actually kind of common. And this brachytherapy was very different. They put these lines, these tubes, into the breast, 20 of them, and then they shot these iridium beads inside, and the radium would stop right inside where the tumor was, and the radiation can treat just that area. We found this doctor in University of Wisconsin, which was driving distance, and we went up to see him. We literally begged and pleaded for him to accept me into his trial. Now, if you know anything about clinical trials, you get this low-risk population, you try an interventional therapy, and you hope it looks good on paper. So here we come, in the door. I'm 25, super aggressive, super high risk, first person ever to be diagnosed at Loyola at that age. Like, everything about me was like red flag, run. We sat in his office, and the first thing I remember was sitting with a doctor who was present, completely present. He was not looking at his watch. He was not looking at the clock on the wall. He sat and listened to our story. And by the end of it, we were all in tears because Aaron was begging him to take me on and said, "I want my wife to live. Will you please, please give her a chance?" He, with tears in his eyes, he said, "Absolutely." And I knew, not only was this doc who was willing to do something outside the box for my own, potentially saving my life, but I saw in that man the kind of doctor that I wouldn't be. Hello, hey guys. Good to see you. Come on back. Perfect.
Speed. Rolling. Slide in.
Let's breathe. No. Before we jump into the visit, like I said, I'm so grateful for both of you, and we've been together a long time. We've had a huge journey, and I mentioned in the other room, but I wanted you to know, like, from the depths of my heart, I've thought a lot about this, and just your willingness to put yourselves out here with this. And I am first your doctor. This is all, doesn't matter. My heart is wanting to lift you up and to protect you, but I also know you want to tell your story, so that's what we'll do in a minute. But I kind of want to just set the stage in the sense of, I'm here as your doctor first, and all this is periphery. And it could all go in an instant if it meant that you got well, or like, and I think you know that, but I wanted to like sit here and just start with like, my intention is here with you.
Saying,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. There's a few things that are super touchy for me, and that's just from 20, 30 years of illness that
We found Dr. Jill sort of happenstance. I walked into her office, met with her for a few minutes, and went, okay, this is a whole nother level of doctor. 16 years old, at spring break, I ended up with horrific sores in the back of my throat. And we went into the Vale Hospital, and they said, you most likely have mono. Here's some stuff to help you take care of it, go home, rest. And it just kept getting worse. By the end of the summer, my dad had to carry me into Children's Hospital. I'd lost so much weight. I think I was around 115 pounds. Crohn's, Behçet's, MS, early onset Parkinson's, all that came up negative. And I mean, we were trying anything and everything, and nothing is doing anything. And then I spent the next decades with no answers. I'm having to advocate for myself, and I'm probably doing a poor job of it. It wasn't until I met Alyssa that I knew I had somebody that wasn't going to judge me and had my back fully, utterly, and completely. I knew I could keep going. We met Dr. Jill, and we walked into her office, sat down with her, and I mean, within 10 minutes, we were in tears. She listened to me. There was some compassion there that I had not seen in anybody. I told her everything. I mean, brutally honest, really where I was at. You could feel it in our first appointment that this was it. I didn't have to look any further. After listening and listening and listening, she goes, you know, I know what this is. We need to test you for Lyme disease. God, a feeling, spiritual connection. I don't know what occurred right then and there, but I knew it in my heart. I knew it in every ounce of my body that this is what it is. That's the first time I felt hope. From 16 years old to into my 30s, of in and out of hospitals, in and out of doctors. She got it right away. She grabbed me, took me under her wing. She saved my life.
There's not one day that goes by that I don't get to witness a miracle. And the miracle within the miracle is someone opening their heart and life so completely vulnerable to you that they will tell you things they've never told anyone else. And they'll share on a level that allows me to help them and to help them find their path to healing. So the very interesting thing is I was the one of all my girlfriends who said, I am not getting married, or at least not until after 30. I'm going to school, I have a career, I want to pursue medicine, and marriage was the last thing on my mind. But I met this divorced bartender, father of 3, at the bar where I was waitressing in Champaign-Urbana, and when I brought him home to meet my mother, she about fainted. Okay, we won't include that, but poor Kathy, she had a heart attack.
She met this young man, Carnahan, and she came home one weekend and was telling Dad and I about him. And she said, yeah, Mom, he's been married before. So I'm thinking, okay, he's been married before, maybe he's got a child. And I said, so does he have any children? Yeah, he's got 3 children. It's like, oh my, I was thinking maybe he's got 1. Oh, he's got 3. So it was an adjustment, but when you feel like God is in something, I remember reading the verse too. Like, what can you say? If God be for this, who can be against it, and what can you say? And Jill was so good with those kids right off the bat.
When we first got married, life was chaotic. I think the newness, I always loved new adventures, and to me it was like an adventure, having 3 children all of a sudden, and a spouse, and a 400 square foot apartment with 1 bedroom for all of us. And then I was applying to medical schools and trying to decide where the next year of our life was going to be spent. I really felt supported by Aaron, because a lot of spouses might have been nervous about going to a new place and just following the medical school residency, where are we going to end up? But I felt very, very strongly supported about wherever I needed to go. So it was neat to have that feeling of I could choose, and I knew that he would support me whichever choice I made, wherever we ended up. I can't believe I'm back at Loyola. Walking up to this place today was so surreal. Everything just came flooding back. And the very first time I came here was for an interview, and I think I didn't really believe I could be a doctor. And I remember seeing that Stritch School of Medicine and the surrealness. This was probably my first interview. I don't remember any other interviews before that. And thinking about, wow, could I really come here? Could I really learn medicine? Do I really have what it takes? And today, coming back here, all of that feeling came flooding back. There's been certain things in my life I've been able to just kind of block out and forget, and there was some beautiful, beautiful experiences here, but there's a lot of hard stuff here too. It's so emotional to be here, and it's this beautiful combination of absolute joy and pride and gratitude and sadness for that girl who had to be brave, had to show up day after day, had to be tough, had to take care of her family, finish medical school, and never really let anyone know how much it hurt and how much she was afraid. I don't think I ever said that I was afraid of dying, ever. But the truth is I was at times. I don't think I ever really let myself feel that fear. I just pushed it away and went on to performing. The dancing bear, we call it. I was really good at being a dancing bear and performing and not letting anyone know how terrified I was.
after I finished treatment, I think I thought I was supposed to feel better. Here I had got through cancer. I was supposed to be grateful and happy and healing and well and thriving. But I did not feel that way. I was so sick. Because I had grown up with this pull up by the bootstraps mentality, be strong, be courageous, don't complain. And one thing I hadn't learned was how to express a need or say, I'm not feeling well, can you help me? All I knew was how to pretend to be brave and strong and tough. I recall being in the ER one day and passing out when I was taking a patient's blood pressure. And I think that was when I had to face the fact that I was really sick and that something wasn't right. I went late one night to the resident on call, and he diagnosed me with an abscess, and they took me right into surgery and admitted me to the hospital that very night. And I came out the next day, they drained the abscess, and they told me, you know what, Jill? You've got Crohn's disease. So there was a lot of shock initially. Like, wait a second, I just had cancer. What is this? Why did I get two things? Like, I didn't ask for that. Didn't I just, win the prize for getting through cancer and now I should be free for the rest of my life of disease? But obviously that's not the case. So it was a shock, and it was kind of a disbelief still. Like, really? Could this really be? But as I put together the story of what had happened the preceding months, I knew he was right. So I met with the gastroenterologist after the surgeon told me I had Crohn's, and the gastroenterologist sat me in his office and explained what Crohn's was, what to expect, which was lifelong symptoms. I would likely need immune-modulating heavy-duty drugs to control it. I would probably need multiple surgeries to take out part of my colon during my lifetime. And right then he recommended I go on heavy doses of steroids to calm the inflammation. I had just gotten out of this abscess with infection and I was on antibiotics. So in my intuitive sense, I thought, oh, that doesn't feel right because steroids are gonna suppress my already suppressed immune system and I'm fighting an infection. So I said, I'll think about it. And I do remember before I left asking him one question, and I was genuinely curious. I said, Doc, what diet should I be on? I wanna make sure that I do whatever I can. And he just didn't even pause, and he said, Jill, diet has nothing to do with Crohn's disease. And I remember having this epiphany at that moment, like, wait a second, that cannot be true. Crohn's disease was my fast-track education to becoming a gut expert. And as with most of my life, I somehow have to experience things to get that depth of understanding, and Crohn's was one of those things for me. I wanted to understand why did this happen and how could I reverse it. First of all, the toxic drugs from chemotherapy added to a more permeable gut, so the lining of the gut became more porous. So for example, the normal gut bugs that we all have, even if they get outside into the bloodstream, we shouldn't have a horribly inflammatory reaction. But for me, my genetics said that when my body saw these foreign things in the bloodstream, it caused a cascade of inflammatory reactions that ended by my own body attacking the gut. So we looked at diet, we looked at the microbiome composition, we looked at overgrowth, infection, and really started to heal from Crohn's by changing the diet. I got rid of gluten and inflammatory foods, and I did foods that would heal my microbiome. And then I treated the abnormal overgrowth of bacteria and yeast in my gut. And all of those things brought the inflammation down to a level where I was able to heal. And now I'm healed completely from Crohn's disease. I get a lot of flack from saying that I'm healed from Crohn's disease because according to conventional medicine, Crohn's and colitis are considered incurable. Many people say, oh, you're just in remission. But I don't believe that's true. And this is part of the miracles that I get to see in functional medicine, because if you go back to root cause and you work on that root, we see things that are not supposed to be curable, cured. But when you don't understand the root cause analysis and how functional medicine can reverse that trajectory, then why wouldn't you think this process is incurable? Because it starts and perpetuates itself unless you intervene with a specific intervention that reverses that pathway that started the whole process. Autoimmunity is a really fascinating realm in general. Most autoimmune diseases are in one realm. So if you have arthritis, you go to see rheumatology. If you have multiple sclerosis, you see a neurologist. And if you have Crohn's or colitis, you see a gastroenterologist. So because they're very siloed and they're based on systems, they're not often thought of as a whole. But the truth is that at the base of every autoimmune disease, whether it's your joints or your brain or your gut, it's the body turning against itself and attacking self. So the principle that underlies these diseases are all the same. And I remember learning in functional medicine that there's a triad around autoimmunity that underlies any autoimmunity you could imagine. It's environmental insult, like gluten or toxic chemicals or some insult. It's genetics, which are unchangeable. And it's this gut-immune interface where the gut and immune system talk to one another across the lining of the gut. And those three things are core as the starting process for any autoimmune disease. And we're not taught that in conventional medicine, but once we understand that root principle, I could have a rare autoimmune condition that's 1 in a million and have the person who had that condition walk into my office. And even if I've never seen that condition, I know exactly how to treat it and how to go about finding root cause. And that is because we go back to, where did this start? What things shifted in the body, in the physiology, to start a patient down a trajectory where their own body would get the wrong signal and attack self? If I can go back there and find that, we can reverse the irreversible. And I've seen it over and over and over again.
Okay, Topher, I think this is the section you were talking about.
Yeah. What did you say earlier? You believe we can do anything?
Everything is figure-outable. Everything is figure-outable. Even a rock face that seems
What
to
you
have
really want to know now is where your footholds are to your left and to your right at about waist level. Look for where do you see some little footholds?
Maybe here.
Yeah, good. Just try moving. I'm moving that foot up. Just go for it. If you fall, it's okay. That's how the whole way this is set up.
Okay.
It's okay to fail.
All right.
Yeah. Just like a little kid on the monkey gym. Good, Jill. That was probably the hardest move of that section, so just keep working it. Yep.
Sorry, Topher, I had to put on my lip gloss for the last final ascent.
Yeah, for sure. Nice, Jill.
Yes! Woo! I did it! That's freaking hard.
Well, Jill, it was a little bit harder than I expected.
Me too. But
So,
it was
but
fun,
you
and
did
I
really-
love a challenge. So now that I'm down, I'm really glad. Now I just learned I could do something
It
else
wouldn't
hard.
have been a proper Jill Carnahan climb if it had been easy.
True. Very true. You know better.
You looked a little more experienced on your movement than you did at the first time when we did it on the flat iron. Like right away, it didn't seem quite as foreign when you stepped off the ground.
Yeah. But you being there with that rope, standing there, and then even talking me through it, felt incredibly safe and secure. Like, okay, I can do this. It was like before, you say I can do it, okay. I don't know if I can, but he says I can, so okay.
But I think there is a similarity there to the what you do as a physician, because you don't know exactly what the person's going to need, but you can start to see patterns of success before they can, and I could see patterns of success here before you could.
That's actually huge, because I know there's going to be a way, and they don't know there's going to be a way. So it's actually my confidence in the process, just like you had complete confidence, even though I didn't, and you kept encouraging me. You know, you can do it. Just do this. Just do this. And it's the same way with patients. Really, it's just. I'm completely confident that we're going to get there. And sometimes they'll say, am I going to die? Are you sure I'm going to get well? I'm not sure about anything, right? But I know that there's ways, and so I encourage them in a way that's like, yes, it's possible. The things that you believe are impossible are possible. And I think that's powerful. That's someone who believes in you more than yourself. And you were that for me here and on the Flatirons. And sometimes I can be that for the patient.
I think you're that way for the patient a lot.
Yeah.
Hello. My gosh, look at her hair. You look so gorgeous. You look so beautiful. Oh my goodness, I love it. That's amazing. Thanks. Oh my gosh, you look like a new woman.
Oh, thanks. I feel like it too.
Yeah.
I do.
And then, great. Yeah, and then let's look at your immune and anti-cancer support. With your oncologist, did you get a recent blood counts at all in the last 6 months?
I did, yes. I think I sent them over
Oh,
to
here, let's see. Got it. I got it right in front here. So let me take a peek.
I just took screenshots, so sorry, it's kind of all...
No, it totally works, yeah. Your D is low. We want to for sure address that. That's so critical for cancer and prevention and everything, and that's easy to fix. Your cancer androgens look great.
Good.
CEA looks great. White blood count, so it's close to normal.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that astragalus, so I was going to try to get rid of that, but because you're still a little bit under normal, it's probably going to be helpful. So what we'll do over time is, you don't have to take all of these things forever, but I'll just kind of slowly, as you get further and further out, we can decide what's less important, because you are doing so well. I'm so proud of you. I feel honored and privileged to be part of your journey, because it's to see the transformation, and you're going to do amazing. I already know it. Like, I know there's probably those little fear seeds that come, because they do for all of us. But
they do.
I have no doubt you have a long, amazing life ahead of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
I just love you so much.
Love right back at you, and you're doing a great job. So you take care of her, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Will do.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. I don't know why I'm crying.
That was awesome.
Yeah, she's always awesome.
She's glowing. She really is. She looks like a different person. Wow. That is awesome. And that is why I do what I do every day.
I moved to Colorado in October of 2010. My dad, despite the 80s when there was no money, or when the 90s when they had more money, he would consistently make family vacations a huge priority. And one of our favorite destinations, summer or winter, was Colorado. All of us kids loved Colorado. We did a lot of summer trips, so I had lots of experience as a young child coming out here, going camping, hiking. And then as we got older, we started skiing in Wisconsin and Michigan, but then some of our first family vacations in the winter were ski vacations to Summit County, and I loved to ski. It was something I loved so much. And then to think about moving there, wow, I get to ski all the time. It was really exciting. One of the things that happened when I came out here was I looked around at the Boulder and Denver residents, and I noticed something very interesting. They didn't work on Fridays. What in the world? I couldn't believe it. I grew up on a farm where you work 6 days a week, 12-hour days, during harvest, 16-hour days. And we would laugh. It was almost a joke of who quits at 5 o'clock? Like really, you know? So there was this tough mentality of workaholism, now that I know better. And I came out to Colorado with that mentality. And so all of a sudden I saw people enjoying life and having balance and spending time outdoors. And most people who move here love the outdoors. That's one of the reasons they're here. And so all of a sudden I saw this new way of life that I'd never, ever thought was possible. And I feel like that first year being here, that was a year in my marriage that was a re-energizing. We had a new purpose, we had a new vision, we had a new adventure together. We both loved adventure and new experiences. And that was a really beautiful year because we had sold everything we owned in Peoria and we trekked across the country and just trusted. And we played a lot and it was fun as I started the practice. It was probably the most relaxed I was in all my years in Colorado because then life got crazy and I got busy. When you go to a new state, in a new community, in a new type of medicine, there was no inflow of patients. So I had to be creative. I remember going to gyms and to community centers like the community grocery store and giving free lectures because then after the lecture, maybe 5 people would come. And then after the lecture, it's a far cry from today, they would, talk after and then maybe I'd get 1 or 2 patients out of it. Little by little, my day started building up to where I could come in and see 5 or 6 patients on that day I was there. But it was a very, very slow, organic process. One of the other things I did at that time that really helped was I realized I'm gonna need an online presence. I sat down with some marketing help and said, what do I wanna be? How do I wanna put myself out there? And I said, well, I wanna be the expert. I wanna be the expert in functional medicine. So I went to the trademark office and I got a trademark for Dr. Jill, your functional medicine expert. Now what's hilarious is I was not an expert back then, but I knew what I wanted to be and I had a very clear vision of where I was headed. And what happened was really beautiful because I became the expert, but it was slow. Now, I've had a waiting list for 5 years since 2016. There's a huge demand, and now I have no lack of patients. I just lack the hours in the day to see more.
The downside to finally having met someone that you feel like can help you through this problem is that I want to talk to her like every day, and she's one person trying to help a lot of other people like me. I guess it's been a couple of years now since I started feeling just not right. Like I would get a cold, but no one else in my family would get the cold, or I would get something. I just didn't feel healthy. So finally I went in to just my general practitioner, and we did some general tests, and I came back with a really high ANA titer, which is an autoimmune response. My body was in some sort of autoimmune response. Trista actually has all along been sort of adamant about getting Lyme tested. I had done the general sort of CDC test through the rheumatologist or whomever, and that came back negative. And so to me, I was like, well, I did that, and it came back negative. I don't know what you want from me. And she said, no, people are writing me that those tests aren't very good. You need to get a little more thorough test done. So eventually we came across Dr. Carnahan, And she was actually able to get an IGeneX Lyme test. We sent that in. It came back with positive results with Lyme and a couple of co-infections. Right away, speaking with Dr. Jill, you could tell that she cared. I mean, that was the biggest difference, I think, between her and most other doctors. And maybe it was the combination of she cared and also seemed to have some answers. I know a lot of people that go through this feel like they're being sort of gaslit. I think I never felt that way. I even, like my general practitioner, I never felt like he didn't believe me. I think he honestly recognized that there was a large systemic problem happening with Lyme and its ability to be diagnosed. He just didn't have the training or the understanding to relate. He felt as lost as I did. And Dr. Jill was the first person that actually began to shed some light on the problem and give some hope to the situation. Dr. Jill, the good side is like an amazing person who is super passionate about what she does and very knowledgeable. And on the other side, she's just one person. We just need more people.
As my practice grew, I started to realize that I could only see one patient at a time, and there was such a great need. I started to realize the most important thing that I could do was to begin educating other doctors.
Dad,
how to see you.
Yeah.
How's it going? Do you remember when we first met?
I do. It was in that same room, and I had called you because I was now fond of functional medicine. I looked up best functional medicine persons, and you were the 20th best doctor in like the world or something on some report, and then you were like, God, she's in my backyard. I got to call this woman. So I remember I called you, and you were like, I'm out riding my motorcycle. I'm like, this is a badass chick. I was like, this is awesome. I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, you're not, I told you I was a neurosurgeon. You're like, yeah, let me come in tomorrow.
I remember getting an email, like probably before you called me, and it said, Chad Prusmack, MD, Denver Broncos neurosurgeon, and all your other credentials that went on a whole mile long.
Yeah,
and somehow I think I should ignore this one.
I know. Funny, it's funny. I think when I look back, I think I went to Harvard, became a neurosurgeon, and became a Denver Broncos just so people would listen.
Yeah.
You're like, see, you answered my phone because of the Denver Broncos.
Totally.
Like, thank God I put all my blood and tears into that. It worked.
I love it. Though that's similar. You do bring credence to our field, and yet the thing I love about you is your heart is so big.
Thanks.
Like truly, you have the right motives, and you do things for the right motives, and that's why you're manifesting such beautiful, amazing things.
Well, you also take some credit because you were my teacher for a year. I basically was your intern. You remember? Calling you every night. To see that you can do a perfect job in neurosurgery surgically and a patient can have a bad outcome led me to believe there were variables outside of my performance in the operating room or my clinical decision making that I did not have an understanding for or I couldn't help with. So this type of medicine called functional medicine, Dr. Jill is a world-renowned in this area, and it's her approach which is extraordinarily unique because it's one-on-one and it's extremely patient-centric. She's on a mission, in my opinion, and the mission is a humanitarian aid mission, and I think she's figured out, because she's very bright, that it's about teaching others that can teach others.
I quickly realized that there was a much greater impact because each physician that I could reach and change and inspire, there would be another 1,000 or 2,000 patients that would be helped that I couldn't see. Hi guys, good morning.
Hi,
Good
nice
to meet you too. Hi,
Nice
good
to
morning,
meet
you
you.
too.
Hi,
Hey, good morning.
Nice
Good to meet you
How
guys.
are you?
Awesome, great to be here. Hello,
nice to meet you.
you
I'm
too.
Heather.
Awesome, Heather, great to meet you too. Okay, cool.
Somewhere.
Also, I think I gave whoever's doing the AV my slides, and I don't know which version, but I have one little change, and I could just talk to them and have them do it, or I could send a new deck.
Do you want me to coordinate that?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Yeah, so
I'll pull out my laptop and it's 10. What is it? 23.
Yes.
Okay, so that should be easy Dropbox link.
Okay.
And then
I will download.
make sure the one thing that'll be different, that'll be really easy if you can take a peek at it when you get that, is right in the very intro.
Okay.
You'll see the big rock like 3 slides in.
Okay.
That's the switch, because I'm going to do this story in the beginning.
Warm welcome to Dr. Jill Carnahan.
These are the things that are weakening our immune system that should be robust and able to fight these things and keep them at bay. When I first started speaking, I would hide behind the science and the studies and all the important facts. And then one day I started sharing my own personal life journey and what had happened to me and all that I had been through. I'd been the patient, and I'd experienced things that not everybody gets to or has to experience.
I was the doctor who said, yeah, I'll do functional medicine, I'll never do Lyme disease, and I'll never treat mold. Never freaking say never.
So I think it was shortly after moving to the new office that I started feeling more tired and run down. I started having rashes and infections and getting sick frequently, and I began to have brain fog, so things were more difficult. They weren't as clear and concise. And I remember when I started feeling short of breath, that I couldn't carry on a conversation with a patient as I'm walking up the stairs. I thought, this doesn't seem right. I'm running marathons. Like, why am I short of breath going upstairs? And my office manager at the time noticed my eyes would be red and bloodshot by the end of the day. My skin was wrecked. I had awful pustular acne. I had rashes where my scalp was peeling and flaking off. I had massive red, bloody circles around my eyes from the infection and inflammation. I never really thought it was cancer. My office manager thought I had cancer, and there were several other friends and family that did. I never thought that, but it was a mystery. I remember sitting in the car, and I was getting ready to head into church that day, and I looked in my visor mirror, and I just started crying. Because the person I saw in the mirror was like a horrific version of what I believed myself to be. My eyes were so cracked, I looked like I had aged 20 years. And even with makeup, I couldn't cover it up. And through the cracks, one of my under eyes on my left, there was bleeding. And I just looked in the mirror and I thought, I can't go in like this. I can't face people. I'm supposed to have the answers and help heal people. And yet my face was a walking billboard of something much different. I barely knew anything about environmental toxicity and mold, but I knew just enough to have a small sneaking suspicion, knowing that if this was true, if there was mold affecting my health, it was either my home or my work or my car or something that was going to need to be remediated, or I would have to move or leave. And that alone, that knowledge of a massive transition, was almost too much. I did 2 tests. One was I brought an inspector in, and we went down to the basement and we found bulk mold. And I did this urine test and I got the results back. And the type of toxin from Stachybotrys, this really dangerous toxin, was 2 or 3 times the normal limits in my urine. Like always, I wanted to find an answer and I had to figure it out, and I had to figure it out to save my own life.
So I dove in and became a mold expert. The difficulty with mold is it's not just here's a root cause, you fix that and you recover, because it involves, while you're getting well, being in an environment that has minimal mold. If you have an exposure in your home or your workplace or your car, it is difficult, if not impossible, to get well when you're swimming in toxic soup. It's almost, I always say it's like bailing out a boat that's leaking. You're just bailing out water, but you're still taking on water at the same time. I literally got my results that I had positive trichosithanes, which is that really nasty toxin from one of the black molds, in my urine the day after Christmas, and I never again set foot in my office. I left all of my things. I left 20 years of medical school books, which I loved books, and that was a sad day, but it was worth the price of my health. The journey of healing is straightforward and yet quite complex, but at the core, we just support the detoxification system, and we give patients binders which help to have an electrostatic charge and pull those toxins out of the body. They basically escort them out and help the patient in eliminating toxins. Many people get stuck in the middle where they mobilize and they do all these supplements and protocols that push the toxins out of their tissues, and they go right into the bloodstream, and that patient feels horrible when their blood is loaded with toxins. So sometimes they get worse if they're pushing that side too much. But the excretion part is really where it's at, and this is much more subtle. Things like binders I took, charcoal and clay, chlorella, glycomannins, and there's many others. And a combination of those works best to pull and help the body excrete those toxins that are mobilized. I frequently talk about the bucket as an analogy for toxic load. And it's like we're all born with a capacity. Some of us have smaller buckets or worse detox genetics than others. And some people have a large capacity for detox. You know, that 95-year-old who has a gin and tonic and a cigar in the other hand, and they're just doing fine at 90-something years old. That person has a very large capacity for detox, and they are very resilient, and the environment doesn't affect them very much. Then there's someone like me who corn and soybeans and crop dust and mold and et cetera, all of these things contribute. And I likely was born with a very small bucket or ability to detoxify so that it doesn't take much to fill that up and cause signs and symptoms of illness. So with patients, when they first come to see me, most of the time their bucket's full. And my job isn't to identify every last thing that's in that bucket and empty it out. It's just to bring down the water level enough so that there's margin, because with that margin, all of a sudden their body will kick in and do what it's supposed to do. All they need back is a little bit of margin, and then they can start to heal and on that pathway.
Well, I'm gonna make Daddy his own too, but how about I give him a little, he can taste tester. Yeah, a little taste tester, yeah, okay. I guess it's gonna turn red. You know, I feel like she's my doctor and she can advise me, but she's also my friend. She knows what she's talking about, so you have that confidence in her, but she also loves you and has you in her best interest. Like, she wants you to be healed. She wants you to feel good. She knows what it's like to feel good, and she knows what it's like to feel bad, and she wants you to feel good.
Do you feel like you're healing?
I do. I do. I feel better in my mind. I feel better in my spirit. I feel better in my gut. I feel better on my insides. You know, I feel like I'm healing a lot.
I've been doing functional medicine for 20 years, and I thought I really understood healing. I knew the supplements. I knew the mental attitude. I knew the lifestyle things, diet, exercise, clean air, clean water, clean food. But we never know what we don't know.
had created a beautiful landscape of illusion. Every bit of me would have felt truthful, telling you everything was perfect, my life was great. But I had no clue. I'll never, ever forget that moment. We had just gone to Aaron's father's funeral, and when he came home about a week later, I remember being excited to see him again, and when I opened the door, I didn't even recognize this man that I'd been married to for 20 years. His eyes were like hollow, and there was no connection. And he didn't waste much time. He said, "Jill, I don't love you anymore." I think my mind couldn't handle how that shattered my bubble of what I thought was true. If I had to describe the feeling, it was kind of like a trust fall with nothing behind you, and like a free fall that just keeps going. And the place I tried to go immediately was, maybe I can fix this. Maybe there's something I can do. Eventually, we went to therapy and tried to work it out. But there was no connection. There was no way to reconnect or to heal that fracture. It was shattered. And I had to face the things that I had never faced. Prior to that, I had created a beautiful rose-colored, whitewashed view of my life. And I refused to look at the things that were negative or difficult or painful. I look back at that childhood of huge responsibility. The farm was a very dangerous place. Animals got killed all the time. My neighbors' children got killed. I mean, this was such a common occurrence for a 4-year-old in the driveway to be run over by their father in the implement. And that happened multiple times. That was not a one-time thing. And I mean, my father, my brothers, they were careful. They weren't like, there's nothing wrong with how they proceeded, but there was a lot of danger on the farm. And I think as a sensitive child, I knew the danger. And if I had any fear, I learned really quickly to suppress it, because my family, there wasn't a lot of openness around emotion, and especially negative emotions. There was a rightness about happiness and joy, but if there was anger, sadness, fear, it wasn't okay to express. Fear was like a dirty word. It was weakness. So I learned not to show weakness, even though I was still a scared little 8-year-old. I felt like if I expressed any fear or doubt or real emotion, I would
lose love at the core. That thought has been one of the biggest wounds of my entire life. But in order to heal, and I had to relearn, just like a baby learns to walk, how to go to those places. Because what I started to understand was I could never get past the trauma of those things if I didn't allow myself to re-feel and heal. It may sound strange, but one of the ways that that started was by picturing my younger 5-year-old little self who felt alone and felt unprotected and felt helpless and was terrified, never showed it. And actually, as an adult self, going back in my mind to that younger self, for a while I carried a picture on my phone and I said, "Oh, sweetheart, you're brave and you're strong and you did the best that you could. And you're worth love, and you're good." Through that process of reparenting and loving my younger self, I was able to heal. When he walked in the door, my first thought was the unworthiness and the who am I and can I survive? But through that process, I found a strength that I didn't know I had. That's why I can now, even today, be friends with my ex-husband and have great love and respect, because this isn't about him or me. It's about two traumatized children that never dealt with those pieces that were broken. And what happened in the divorce was it shook us both up, it shook us to the core, and it forced us to go to those broken parts of ourselves and start to learn to love them and care for them and reparent them and give them the deepest love and compassion. And this is relevant not only to my journey, but to every single patient that I'm treating and any doctor's treating, because this core level of healing is the most profound level, and it affects every system. We know the brain actually controls the function of the immune system, the nervous system, the endocrine system. It's proven. This is not esoteric, this is science. But we can read that all day long in a journal, and when you experience the transforming power of your thought processes to transform your human body, that's on a whole different level. I, after cancer and Crohn's, was diagnosed with an immune deficiency. And I've always tried to use all the functional medicine that I know to hack this, to figure it out, to heal my immune system. The most profound changes that I saw in my own immune system, actually objective data on lab values, was after I started loving myself. And when I understood that and saw the numbers and saw the change in my body, now I just want to share it with the world and with my patients. And I so frequently write the prescription, be kind to yourself. And often I teach them, like I did, to start with their younger self, because it's so easy to love a 5-year-old. It's hard, we're so hard on ourselves, and most of us have these voices, oh, I'm such an idiot. Oh my God, why did I do that? We have these running things in our mind that are so cruel to ourselves. And if we can change that recording to, oh, sweetheart, you were doing a great job. Let's try that again. I love that. Because and our self responds to that. And we know now the science proves this, that self-compassion is the healing transition that shifts something inside of us. It's actually the thing that we need most in order to heal. So it may sound crazy, but love is the foundation of all healing.